Today is Wednesday, May 31st, 2017. My name is Patty Bernard and I'm a member of the Nevada Women's History Project. We are interviewing Dee Helming of Austin, Nevada, under a John Ben Snow grant of interviewing women along State Route Highway 50, which has in the past been called the loneliest road in America. Thank you for interviewing with us, Dee. We're very pleased to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about your heritage, your parents' name, where you grew up, a little bit about your education?
My parents' names is James and Mildred Brewer, and I grew up in Jeffrey City, Wyoming. Until I was 17, I spent my entire life there, and then moved here to Nevada.
And what did your parents do? Was this a small town? Or?
Jeffrey City was Wyoming's first uranium mine, and when we first moved there from Pinedale, Wyoming, when I was about 2, my dad worked for Western Nuclear. Well, actually, he worked for Pilot Oil up in an oil field, and then he went to work for Western Nuclear, and he worked there probably 20 years, and then he bought a ready mix plant and had dump trucks and gravel and poured concrete. But he poured probably most of the concrete for the town of Jeffrey City. Jeffrey City was mining, which was, the boom and bust economy. And my mom was a stay-at-home wife who did a lot of volunteering. She was involved in a lot of different organizations and worked at the post office off and on. And then when they got their business, then she helped my dad with the business.
And I don't remember that I asked, when were you born? What period are we talking?
I was born in 1963.
Okay, so really quite heavy into not only the uranium in Utah, and what kind of mining then in the area where you were at?
Uranium. Jeffrey City was Jeffrey City was Wyoming's first uranium mine.
Okay. Were there anybody that was significant influence in your life in those days?
Probably my grandma. I used to go spend summers with my grandmother in Pinedale, Wyoming, and she was a real strong personality. I adored her, so probably her.
Growing up in a small community, you must have been involved in quite a few activities in your schooling.
I was. I played volleyball, basketball, I did track, I did 4-H, Girl Scouts, Glee Club, choir. Whatever the school had to offer, we all did it. So.
And how did you meet your husband?
In 1980, when 3 Mile Island happened and the bottom fell out of the uranium industry, Jeffrey City, Western Nuclear, laid everybody off, handed out their pink slips just before we all before school was out in 1981, in May of 1981. And by then we already knew that things were happening, so my dad had gotten a contract with his dump trucks and his loader at a small mine in Austin, Nevada. And so I was only 17 when I graduated, so they made me move here to Austin. And after I moved there, I went to work out at the Frontier Tavern, which is at the junction of 376 and Highway 50. It's not there anymore, it burned down, but it was a truck stop, and I went to work there, and that's where I met my husband.
And was it a different type of life?
Oh, absolutely.
What was the difference between the two?
Well, in Jeffrey City, we were, at the time that they laid everybody off, there were probably 3,500, 4,000 people there, and we had grocery stores and a clothing store, and we had quite a lot of stuff there. When I moved to Austin, it was very remote. Jeffrey City was remote, but Austin was really remote. And I was used to, there were 26 kids in my graduating class. That year that I moved to Austin, there were 6.
Wow. And
Austin has always had small graduating classes and lack of students. So there was quite an adjustment. I guess it wouldn't be as bad as moving from the big city, but but compared to what I was used to, it was different, and the lifestyle was different. I don't know how to explain how the lifestyle is different, but it was different. We had a bowling alley and we had an indoor swimming pool, and Western Nuclear took really good care of their employees. And we had everything. We had nice schools, we had indoor swimming pool, we had a good life there. They did company picnics all the time. And Austin, but it had no history. And no sense of permanence. And when you came to Austin, it had that great history. And it had this permanence and this sense of community and people belonging, and that was a lot of different.
So you found it easy to actually assimilate into the Austin community? Or?
After I started dating Kip, then yeah, I did. They accepted me, and now I'm like this close to being local.
And you married when?
We got married in 1982, and we've been together ever since. And we have 2 children, a boy and a girl.
Whose names are?
Nicholas Helming is 26, and Jessica Helming is 22.
So they're really out of the house. And
Yeah.
It's just the 2 of you.
Yeah, Nicholas is back in Wyoming with my dad, and Jessie lives here in Reno.
And how did you get involved in the community? What kind of community affairs did you start involving yourself in?
When I worked at the grocery store, I was the store manager, kinda, and as much as Bob would let you. And I attended the chamber meetings and stuff that was in the 80s, and I attended the chamber meetings and was vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. And then when my kids went to school, then I got involved with the school activities and of course, helped with all the different sports programs and all that stuff. My husband has always been very active in the community. We own equipment, and so in the wintertime they used to go plow out all the senior citizens and do all that kind of stuff for them. And he helped out everybody, and then I'm trying to think. I started doing Ducks Unlimited, and I did Ducks Unlimited. I was the chairperson of Ducks Unlimited for 11 years, and we always did that in January because it's such a slow time in Austin that it helped bring people in. And most of our people came in from out of town. We would have 100 to 120 people at our dinner, and probably 95 of them were from out of town.
And why was this important as an event in Austin?
Because of the fact that in January it's really dead in Austin, and it filled the motel rooms, the people ate in the cafes, they all bought gas, and we had the gun club, and the gun club would do a turkey shoot, and so that was helping with the fundraiser for that. And then I went, when my daughter started kindergarten, I started working for the Chamber of Commerce. And then I became even more active and involved. I became a member of the youth board because we have a little youth center there for the kids. I was on the LEDA board, Land or Economic Development, for 11 years. I'm a member of the Historical Society. What else do I do? Oh, I volunteered at the school. Plus, when my daughter became a high school student, I became her class advisor. And then I became the Close-Up advisor. And Close-Up is a program where you take the kids to Washington, D.C. and New York, and they get to tour their government, and then we would spend 2 days about 2.5 days in New York, and we would do the Statue of Liberty and the Metropolitan, and it was great trips. And I would have anywhere from 3 to 7 kids on those trips, and we did all the fundraising for those. And it's really hard to do fundraising in small communities. You have to work your little tail off. So we would do dinners during sports games, and through the chamber, whenever we did events, because our cafes are small, you have to organize meals, because if you don't have food, people don't come. And so I would have my different school groups doing the meals, and we serve 150, 200 people with no problem. When I got involved with Ducks Unlimited, I was working at the Toyabe Cafe. That was before I went to work for the chamber, probably 10 years before I went to work for the chamber. And Bob and Jenny Taylor owned the Toyabe Cafe at that time, and they had picked it up from a guy named Keith Riley, who'd brought it in because he'd been an active member in Fallon. And he thought it'd be fun to actually do one of the dinners out in Austin. Well, it was very successful, and we would hold them at the Toyabe Cafe. And the Toyabe Cafe could host about 75 people. It was crowded, but we could do it. And so they did it for about 3 years, and then they they decided that it had outgrown their venue. And so we moved down to the International, and that was when I took it over and became the chairperson of it. And then I did it for 11 years. And we had changes in the directors. John Ludwig retired, and then Woody came on, and he was in Las Vegas. And slowly but surely, the whole Ducks Unlimited program in rural Nevada kind of faded away. And so we just quit doing that. When my daughter started kindergarten, that's when I started working for the chamber. And in the beginning, I wasn't super active in outside interests, you know, because my daughter was small. Probably 4 years into the chamber, I started doing Pony Express territory, which is part of the Commission on Tourism. And I have been the secretary of Pony Express territory the whole time. And as of July 1 of this year, I will take over as the chairman. So I've done LEDA, Land or Economic Development. I represented our businesses. My husband and I have 3 businesses, so I represented our businesses, and then eventually ended up representing the chamber also through LEDA. I quit that 2 years ago. I decided that I was tired of running up and down the highway all the time, because they never had meetings in Austin. They were always in Battle Mountain. And so at least once a month, I was driving to Battle Mountain. And so I quit that one, but I'm the vice president of the Historical Society and the youth board, and I'm trying to think what else. Oh, the school. What else do I do?
And you brought up an interesting point, because traditionally, up until the last 30 years, the county seat was Austin. Can you tell us what the history of the moving of the county seat to Battle Mountain would be?
In 1864, Jacobsville was the county seat. And the citizens of Austin, after they had moved up the hill, decided that they should be the county seat. And so they had an election and won. And so in the middle of the night, they went down to Jacobsville, or Clifton. It was Clifton, not Jacobsville. I'm sorry. Jacobsville, then Clifton. So anyway, they went down to Clifton and stole all the city records and took them up to Austin. So Austin was the county seat until 1980. And that was the longest continually running court battle in the history of Nevada between the two communities fighting over who was going to be the county seat. It went through legislature several times, and finally it passed. They got enough votes that it passed, and Battle Mountain became the county seat. There was a lot of anger and a lot of animosity through the families, unfortunately, and sometimes it still comes out, which is a real shame, because as a county we need to work together.
You mentioned the Nevada tourism. How important in small communities is the Nevada tourism department and all kinds of activities?
The NCOT, well, now they're Travel Nevada, is extremely important for the rural communities. They are our biggest cheerleaders. They do everything they can to help us out. They do FAM tours, familiarization tours. They bring writers from all over the world and tour them through the different parts of Nevada so they have ideas for stories. 0.5% of 1% of all of the motel tax that is paid goes to the state. And with that money, we get grants to help us do advertising. And we advertise in a variety of different things. Now, Nevada Magazine, I've done the Sierra Foothills, Las Vegas Review-Journal, and RV West. I mean, it allows us to advertise where we couldn't afford to do that. And if you have a new event that's coming up and they think that it could work, they'll help you fund that event, and they'll fund you with less and less every year, hoping that your event becomes as successful and is self-funding. But they help out with billboards, and they do everything they can to help out the small rurals.
And what really still needs to be done for small communities? If you were to be able to say, if I had my druthers, how could small communities in Nevada be better served?
Honestly, the biggest problem that most of our small communities face is aging population. And yeah, as the kids grow up, they leave home because there's no jobs there, or what jobs are there, are not the type of jobs that they want. If we could figure out a way that we could actually move some of the industries further out, I mean, the USA Parkway and stuff is great, but if there was some way that we could actually do more to help the small rurals bring in businesses, they don't have to be as big as they are here, but if we could bring them in and help to bring some of the younger people back that have families, it would help the schools, it would help the communities, it would help with volunteerism.
If I were to say, because Battle Mountain and Austin are two completely different areas, but what would be the main economy for Lander County?
Mining.
Still is.
Mining and agriculture, mostly mining. All of I-80 from Lovelock clear to Wendover is what they call the Gold Belt Corridor, and because there's all these gold mines all along that area. The Carlin Trend and Cortez and all of that, they bring big money in to all those I-80 corridor communities. Austin, I don't know, we just don't seem to have anything really there.
There are very few counties that have two diverse populations, and certainly Battle Mountain and Austin are different. Can you give us just kind of a rough overview of what the difference is in comparison to Highway 50, which is what we are talking about?
Okay. Battle Mountain is an I-80 corridor community. They have all the traffic that goes through and just, they're guaranteed audience there. And Highway 50, Austin is Highway 50. We're very rural, we're more tourism based. We rely somewhat on agriculture, but most of our economy is tourism. Our workforce people are government, they're county, state, Forest Service, school district, and then self-employed people. And there's really just the appeal of living where we live as opposed to living on I-80.
How important is history to Austin?
The Austin people are very proud of their history, and the Austin people are very proud of their community. We were working on community planning a few years ago, the Chamber of Commerce was. So we sent out these surveys and we asked people the things they'd like to see and how they felt about Austin and positive things that they could say about Austin and the negative things, the things that they saw that were a problem. And we sent out 180 of them and we got back 120, which is awesome because you're lucky if you get 3% normally when you do a survey. And I was just really proud of the people of Austin as to how proud of their community they really are. So it was pretty awesome.
Everyone loves to drive through Austin and actually to take the back streets. What makes Austin so special?
Austin is it's a very friendly community, but it's also a very tight-knit community. Whenever something happens, everybody pulls together and they're like family. We all fight like family, but we're all family when it all comes down to it. There's, 200 people in Austin now, and you have to depend on each other. You help each other out. If you're going to town, hey, I'm going to town, do you need some milk? Can you pick up my prescription? And we all work together. And the sense of pride in the history, we have 11 buildings and sites on the National Registry, which was done by a group there in the Austin Historical Society. They worked really hard on that. We have Stokes Castle, which is like a well-known landmark for the state of Nevada, but it's also Austin's landmark. Our churches are 3 of the oldest churches in the state of Nevada. We'll argue with Virginia City. Our Catholic church is older because theirs burned down. Ours never did. And we have the Gridley store. Of course, the history with Gridley, where he was like one of the people that helped found the Red Cross with the sanitary fund and the sack of flour and all of that. There's just, and Emma Nevada, she was a famous opera singer and she grew up in Austin. There's all this great history that Austin has, and it just carries on, and when you live in Austin, you can be a unique character and everybody goes, oh yeah, well that's, blah, 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 no big deal. And they just move on with it. Whereas if you're a unique character in other areas, people try to make you conform and put you into their box. And you just do what you want to do. You live your life, and as long as you live it within the parameters of the law, you do pretty much what you want to do. You have that freedom.
Do you think living in the West influences, is there a Western influence?
Absolutely.
compared to,
Absolutely. The independence, the strong will, fortitude. People that live in the West, they can stand alone, but they can also work together. And when we were back east, they all they're so isolated, and they get nervous when you look at them too long, or if you stand too close to them, and in the West it's like, oh, hey, what are you doing? How are you? Where are you from? What do you, and I think that the West has a strong influence on all of our rural communities.
What about Western women?
Western women are strong. They have to be. When you look at the women coming across the plains in those covered wagons and stuff, they were so strong. They did the work. Those men sat around riding horses and did a little bit of hunting. Those women cooked and cleaned and took care of kids and built fires and took care of the meat. The men might shoot it, but they brought it in and dropped it in their laps, and they had to clean it up, and they were strong.
What about women in communities now?
They still are. It's funny when we have families that are looking to move to Austin, some of them can't actually imagine living without Walmarts and stuff, and it's like, what do you mean the nearest Walmart's 112 miles away? Well, you just get used to it. It's no big deal. We all drive a lot. We spend a lot of time on the highway with our kids, during sports and stuff. Most of the parents all travel with their kids to support them. And we travel to Oahe. We go Carlin, Elko, the hell's the name of that town? Clear up there by the Oregon border. McDermott, yeah. We travel hours. We spend more time on the bus than you could ever imagine. And all of the communities, Austin, Eureka, Ely, all of us, we spend hours traveling and doing, and you learn how to shop, and you learn how to make do, and you learn how to make things for yourself, and you still have that strength, that fortitude that the women that came here in the first place had.
Distance seems to be a fact of life in communities that are in central Nevada, both in school, kids attending school, as well as school activities. We often think of things in minutes, but how long does it take for a child that lives on a ranch, a bus ride into Austin? And then as parents, what's the time factor in taking one of your students to a sporting event?
The Kingston bus runs, it's 40 miles out to Kingston, so the kids spend an hour each way riding back and forth on the buses, and they pick up ranch kids along the way. The kids out in Reese River, their parents actually drive them in, and some of those kids are 40, 50 miles out there, and their parents drive them in. When we do sporting events, our closest community that we play is Eureka, and that's 72 miles. Our furthest community is Oahe, and I believe that's like 300 and some miles away. So what we do when we played Oahe is we would do overnighters. We would play like Carlin, which is 120 miles away, and they would spend the night in Elko and then go up and do Oahe, or they do Oahe, spend the night in Elko, and then come back and play Carlin on Saturday, and then come home on either Saturday night or Sunday. So they were gone for the whole weekend playing sports. And it's just, and the kids ride the bus, and then of course the parents all drive their cars and go along for support. And buses take longer than the vehicles do, so those kids spend a lot of hours. And when your bus breaks down and you're stranded out there on a summit somewhere, and we all come along and rescue our kids and load them up and haul them home. But it's just, distance is a fact of life. You just accept that. We drive 112 miles to the grocery store. We drive to Fallon, to Walmart, to or Safeway or somewhere for grocery shopping, which is why we're always saying, well, I'm going to town, what do you need, and you have little lists, and we all have our little circles, and I'll pick up cat food and milk and whatever else, and then, we just pay each other back when we get home. It's no big deal. Nobody worries about it. You just take care of it and get it done. So.
What about senior citizens and medical?
We used to have a clinic. It was through Nevada Rural Health. Nevada Rural Health is struggling right now, so we don't actually have a clinic in Austin. The Battle Mountain General Hospital opened one up out in Kingston, which is 40 miles away. And so some of them are driving out there. Round Mountain Round Mountain Gold does a senior bus, and they drive through Austin, and so anybody in Austin that wants to get on it and go to Fallon, or if they go to Reno or whatever, then they can get on there and they can go to the doctor that way if they can't drive like some of our seniors. And then again, there's that network where you pick people up and you take people with you, if they need a ride to town, or
a sense of real community.
Yeah, that's where your sense of community comes in, is that you help each other out. You do what you can.
So, in conclusion of this interview, and certainly you've got many more chapters to your life, but how do you view your life as a Nevada woman?
As a Nevada woman living in a small community, you learn to adapt. Okay, you accept the fact that you have to travel a lot. You accept the fact that Walmart is 112 miles away, and it's really no big deal. You make the choices that make yourself and your family happy. We live an outdoor lifestyle, not as extreme as some. We have ATVs, and we hunt and we fish, and we had mountain bikes when our kids were smaller. You learn that the sense of community is very important. And you also learn that with a community that your kids turn out better, because not only do you have your family, but you have the community there also. If your kid spits on Main Street, you know about it before they get home. You accept the fact that no matter what happens, everybody's going to know. And so you just live your life, and you just go on and do what you want to do. And you hope that you've done things right when you're done.
We know what makes a successful Austinite.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that come that just are absolutely passionate, you wouldn't think. But there are also people that must come to the area and find it's not for them. What are some of the things that might be an impetus to move on?
Well, one of the things that we find is people from, we'll use Las Vegas as an example, they want to get away. They're sick of the city, they're sick of all the laws, they're sick of everything that they have to deal with. So they're going to move out to rural Nevada, and they're going to live their life. They're there 3 or 4 months, and all of a sudden they have to have those rules in place, and they start pushing for all these things that they'd moved away from, because the familiarity of it, they can't quite leave that behind. And most of them go back. They find that they need that. They need the sense that they have other people that have control. And, in people that come in that can't live without a Walmart within, a half a mile or so. The shopping issues, I'm saying a lot. We live a long ways to shop, and you learn how to shop accordingly. You can't run to the grocery store every day, and some people can't learn to live that way. They can't survive without being able to go to the grocery store every day, or go to Walmart, or be able to make their own fun. They need the bowling alley, they need the casinos, they need all these things to entertain them. They're not self-entertaining. They can't just go out in the mountains and spend hours out there, because it scares them. The open is too much.
This has been an interesting discussion, Dee. We in either Las Vegas, the more metropolitan areas, or Reno, really look up at the rural areas where things are not quite so easy, and you don't go to the store every 20 minutes, and you don't have a 7-Eleven. It's been a real interesting conversation, and thank you very much.
Sure.